the public hearing for the 2013-2014 Community Development Block Grant Budget Amendment. You all should have a copy of that, and Eric can go through just highlight what the amendments are, if you guys have any questions.
The primary item is, those of you may remember previous conversations, we had originally earmarked $600,000 for what would be the water main project. And so the John Daly project. Short of the story is the bids came in and they came in at about $420,000. So that gave X number of dollars that could be redeployed for other activities. So if you look at the bottom of the one where there's two sets of numbers, you'll see that last year we still have set aside the 300. On the top half, which is the budget amendment, what you'll see is that instead of it now saying 300, it says 120 and some change as far as water improvements. So the mayor's direction primarily was to focus in two different areas. One was to increase the budget for home rehab, so we could do some more projects for the citizens out there. And then also to do some work at the senior center in one of their spaces over there, which is the glass room. And that's really it in a nutshell. The requirement was to have 10 days notice in the newspaper, which it was. It was published in the News Herald a week ago Sunday. And so we met that requirement. I dropped the ball as far as getting it physically put on to the agenda. So with the mayor's approval and with the chairwoman's approval, we'd like to have added to the agenda. So that way we can get it done and we can move forward on these projects.
Now, this is like any other budget. There still may be other amendments that happen periodically from time to time, but you know, we think that you know, this puts us in a pretty good position. The senior center glass atrium. For those of you that don't know, there's kind of on the back side facing the golf course. There's a kind of a glass house area. It's leaking badly. Yeah. And we either have to make a decision. Either we have to invest in repairing it or simply tear it down. We can't really have people in there in its current status. So we put out an RFP. We're pretty confident that it's going to fall somewhere in the budget to have it repaired. And we do know that most of the people that visit the senior center would like to have it remain. So that's our goal.
So they do use it then.
Mm-hmm.
And so to the mayor's point is down the road, one of these other projects may come in, you know, we earmark 10,000, maybe it comes in at 8,000, so, you know, we'll come back at a later date and say we'd like to use that 2,000 towards something else. But these are educated guesses, and with your approval, we can move forward with these.
The home rehab dollars that don't get spent from year to year, is that due to a lack of applications or a lack of qualified applications?
The last, no. It's a little bit of both. I mean, I'm not trying to dodge the question. There's a fair number of applications that come in, and once the folks go through the paperwork and realize that there's income eligibility requirements or some other nuances, and in some cases they are income eligible, but when they realize that they have to put a lien on their property, you'll find a lot of people don't want to have a lien on their property, so they end up not pursuing it. However, this is, to the best of my ability, the highest number that we are now earmarking for home rehab. Over the last few years, it appeared as though that the CDBG was really gearing itself more towards larger projects like the water main project, which was eating the lion's share of the overall budget. Because we had already gotten so far down the road with the water main improvement, we decided to let that one ride. But once again, as soon as additional funds made themselves available, we pushed them towards home rehab. And according to the mayor's direction, is next year and future years, we're really going to be gearing it more towards helping the residents versus projects.
So if I could just elaborate a little bit on the councilman's question. The previous administration didn't necessarily share the desire because of there's a lot of record retention required. You have to keep files and all these records in place for the duration of the loan, so to speak. So 30 years, 40 years in some cases later, we're still trying to make sure that we have the records. I disagree. I think that this is the spirit of the community development block grant is to help out the residents in need. So you know, we want to make sure that we get back to the root of the intention of the program itself. So, you know, that's why we're trying to earmark as much as we could this year, and of course, next year we'll look at earmarking even more and get back to the spirit of those programs.
Yeah, I was trying to figure out why it wasn't being used, and you know, if it was, is there a maximum loan to value ratio? You'd say they don't want a lien. Is it possible if they don't qualify for a lien, you know, their house is maxed out, it's worth 60 and they owe 80 on it?
Yeah, no, and believe it or not, that is not one of the requirements as far as
It's
what
not.
the federal government.
So again, one of the things we're looking at is can we look at, you know, this thing being even like the loan being the life of the asset. So in the case of a roof, if the expectation is a 10-year roof, can we at least put it like it's a 10-year loan? So, you know, there could be 3 roofs on it later by the time the house is finally sold and the lien released. You know, so we're looking at what can we do to make the program better,
Right.
but at the same time, we don't want to get away from, you know, what the design of the program is.
I assumed it was they just didn't qualify because of property value.
No, the number one disqualifier is that folks they don't realize that they're not allowed to make a certain amount of money, you know, less than or greater than. And so once they find that out, that's probably the number one reason. And the second most common reason is that even if they are income eligible, they just, a lot of folks, you know, well, but a lot of it has to do with how individuals are raised and the generation with which they were raised is, they don't want liens on their property, you know. Yeah, that's put up by the federal government. That's not. Sure, I can go get a copy of it. But it's put up by the federal government. It's not something which is raised. Which is raised.
The what, I'm sorry, I missed the question. Which was,
The requirement. So if it's a single individual in the home, they can't make more than
Oh.
32,000. If there's 2 in the home, 34,000. It's a sliding scale depending on how many people reside in the home. So I'll go grab it. Any other questions at this time? All right, thank you, everyone.
Madam Chair, we do have one more. I'd like to ask City Council to welcome Mr. John Carter and Susan Miller Anderson. And John, do you want to present this to the council and just go through it real briefly?
Sure.
This is not on the agenda, and this is my fault. We did talk about putting this on today so everybody was aware. This shouldn't take too long.
So the Information Center approached me back in the fall and said that they had caught wind of this grant being out there. It's an opportunity to set up a pilot financial empowerment center. It isn't a government granting institution, it's actually through a philanthropist group. And it's to set up a pilot that mimics what they have done in the city of New York by setting up financial empowerment centers, kind of going after the gap that through HUD you get all these community development type grants that put band-aids on people's financial situation, but don't really do anything to address the long-term root cause of it's really financial illiteracy is what's driving many of these people to where they are today. So the idea behind this pilot is to set up a financial literacy type center. We applied for the grant back in November. We're one of the 3 communities in Michigan that were awarded the grant. The grant is only $25,000. All of that fund will actually go to the Information Center, who will provide the financial hub and the financial counselor, who will go through the education process that's being provided and actually give the training sessions to lower income residents primarily. We're targeting lower income residents, but there isn't an income qualifier. Anybody can go. Any of us could go if we so chose to.
John, when will the program actually kick off, and when can people reach out for this assistance?
Training of the counselors is set to kick off in the next 45 days. The launch date is July 1st.
So anytime after July 1st, this should be available for those that desire it or qualify.
Yes. So the challenge is going to be how do we get the information distributed quickly, where will we set up the centers. So we've done a lot of homework already in setting up, preparing some community partners who've said you can use our facilities. So on the south end of town, for instance, we'll have a off-site, we'll have a location at the information center. We'll have an off-site location at the Villages of Taylor, because we're going to directly target that group. We have a few churches that have said, if you can use our facility to target a population in our area, you can use our facility. The Housing Commission, we're willing to provide space to as a satellite site. We would hope that you folks would be kind enough to offer space here if that need exists.